Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this podcast, and apparently fodder for my high school yearbook for Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to mention this in our last week's episode,
I
Julie.
couldn't help it.
But I suddenly noticed that my high school yearbook photo
It was on
is
Ancestry.
displayed
I had to.
on our Facebook page.
So are mine. So if I have to be up there, you can be too. You look very tan and blonde.
You know what happened was I graduated a little early because my family was moving out to Los Angeles from Massachusetts, and I had spent several months out here in LA, and I got a tan. And when I went back for my senior photo or whatever, I was tanned, and it was the 80s. So
I thought you were just prepping for.
No. But I did. I looked at it. I'm like, oh my God.
You're very handsome.
Oh, you're so sweet. Yeah, it's awkward, but what the best part was reading like what I wrote underneath, because I haven't looked at my yearbook in so long.
Yeah.
And it was so weird, but I remember all of the
I
things.
can tell that they are all inside jokes.
Yeah.
And yeah. It was fun.
And I love that too. It was fun to see that. Now all of you can see it too. Another little window into my world.
Yeah, I found my husband's too, but I didn't post his. He would have killed me.
It's weird that you can get people's high school yearbook photos on Ancestry.
know.
I mean, that's such an odd thing, right?
Well, it's yearbook photos are a great way to research people. I mean, think
true.
about it, especially if you're looking for biological parents. You can find them, and you somehow know what school they went to.
Well, you know what? Actually, you're absolutely right, and I should know this because a friend of mine whose birth mother found him partially through I remember she had his high school yearbook. She had a copy of it. Like somehow she got her hands on one. And this was years ago, before the whole DNA and Ancestry and all that stuff, just so she could see him.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Nope.
Well, I
Makes
guess not
perfect
to you.
sense to me. But yeah, that's why. I mean, I look at a lot of yearbooks.
So aside from posting random pictures of me on the Facebook page, what you been up to, Julie?
Trying to stay cool.
Yes. Oh, I know. Still, right?
Yeah. Kids are both back in school now, so the house is quiet, and my air conditioning's still broken.
Oh, my Lord.
Don't get me started. And life is great. Too much?
Yeah. She's on her meds, apparently.
Okay. Let's talk about genealogy.
Do we have to?
Yep.
Oh,
Because
all
that's
right.
what this podcast is about.
I always forget because you just come over and we just,
And we just shoot the breeze.
Shoot the breeze.
Yep.
I was
All
going
right.
to say shoot the shit.
I know you were, but this is a family
Oh,
podcast.
yeah. Except when we're talking
Except
about Dillinger's dick.
yes, I know.
Which I'm still waiting for an update on that.
There is no update.
Yes, there is. You've got to look this up, Julie. Remember, they were going to exhume his body.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
They haven't done it yet.
Right. We're
It's
still
like,
waiting.
I think it's the 16th.
Yeah, so we got to keep up.
Oh, yeah. I'm waiting with bated breath about
Set
that
a
one.
Google alert on John Dillinger.
Okay.
Well, not on Dillinger's dick, but just on John Dillinger. And so that you find out and we can report on it. Because I want to know, too.
Yeah.
Like, is that him in the grave?
Funny you should say that because I was listening to episode 20-something on the way over here today, and we were talking about the Battle of Bosworth Field and how they were putting a test track for self-driving cars.
Oh.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a huge, and so I looked it up real fast to see if there's been any resolve to that, and I couldn't find anything else. So I should probably put that on Google Alert as well. In fact, I should put everything on Google Alert.
Yeah, but you knew there was going to be a date when they were going to exhume Dillinger's body.
Yes.
So, I mean, they may
Correct.
not know the moment that they exhume it, but they'll at least, you'll keep up on it.
Good point.
Oh, you were going back to our 20s. I hardly remember anything in my 20s. Oh, you mean the 20s in our episodes? Oh, that wasn't that long ago.
50 episodes ago.
Oh, my God. That's right. This is episode number 70. Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, same age as my dog.
In dog years, I hope.
Actually, he's older than that.
Oh, my Lord.
That's a whole other story. Okay. Hey.
Yes.
Did you know that you can put your social media details on your Ancestry profile so that you are easier to get in touch with?
I think it's good, but it could also be a little scary because then like random people can look you up and that you don't know.
Oh, they will anyway, friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they might just see your yearbook photo.
Right.
And say, I want to know more about this guy.
Well, I mean, by doing that means you're open to people reaching out to you.
Sure. It's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Making things public so that people can
Correct.
find you so that you are searchable.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And mine is on there. I didn't realize it. But in your profile,
Boy, do people get more than they bargained for when they look up Julie.
oh boy, do they? Oh boy. Oh my gosh. I have like a bunch of cases that are just sitting there waiting for responses from people right now.
Really?
Like really high matches that would be so easy. And all my thinking outside the box and researching is not working. Like, I think they must be using fake names, which is common, and I've told people they can do that, so that's on me, I guess. But yeah, it's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. So this is a new thing on Ancestry then, that you're allowed to put on your social media information, or is it just...
I guess so. Because somebody said it, somebody mentioned it on Facebook yesterday. And so, yeah, you put it on your, the left side of your profile, I guess, just above where it says how long you've been a member, there's a chain link icon.
Oh,
and if you click on that, it'll take you... If you click on that, you can add all your social media details. So there you go. You can probably put a bunch of stuff on there.
Yeah, or you could selectively put, like if you just
right.
want...
Yeah.
Just put your Twitter feed.
The things you're most proud of. My IMDb page. No, not really.
Oh, no. Internet Broadway database, perhaps?
There's like one thing on there.
Well, at least it's one more than I got.
There you go. All right. Okay, moving on.
Yes.
Did you know that Aaron Burr had a secret family?
No. Old Ironsides?
Is that what he was called?
No, Old Ironsides was a ship in Boston Harbor. But he played Ironside. Didn't he?
What?
It was a TV show.
Aaron Burr was the man who shot Alexander Hamilton in a duel.
I'm thinking of Raymond Burr. He was in Rear Window, and he was Perry Mason, and then he was Ironside in the 70s. Oh, my God.
Oh, I love that you just went there with that.
I wasn't trying to be funny there. That was just stupidity.
I could tell you were very earnest.
For once.
I was like, who is he thinking of?
Oh, God. Raymond Burr.
Yeah,
No.
Raymond Burr.
So Aaron Burr, who famously shot
Alexander Hamilton
Yes.
in a duel.
Yes. Oh, my God. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So he had a whole other family of color.
Oh.
Having had 2 children, one of whom is abolitionist John Pierre Burr, with Mary Ammons, who was a woman from India.
Okay.
The children's relationship to Aaron Burr was just acknowledged by the Aaron Burr Association in September. Recently, that recognition was literally written in stone, engraved onto a new tombstone, and placed upon Jean Pierre's previously unmarked grave.
Isn't it nice that they come to the truth 250 years later?
Yes. Just takes some of us longer, I guess. It's all thanks to Sherry Burr, a law professor emeritus at the University of New Mexico and author of Complicated Lives, no kidding, which details some of the Burr lineage. He had 2 children with her, actually. The association immediately unanimously voted to officially acknowledge Jean-Pierre and his sister Charlotte Louisa as the children of Aaron Burr, thus legitimizing an entire line of his descendants as his direct descendants.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is in your genes.
Yep.
But,
indeed.
maybe he just didn't wear jeans. They probably weren't created.
I heard he invented jeans.
He did not invent jeans.
Wait a minute, Aaron Levi Burr, I think was his name.
When did jeans get invented?
I'm
Blue
going to say
jeans.
1850
That sounds good.
by Levi Strauss.
Someone's reading labels. It's probably like on the label,
I
right?
think it might
There's
be.
a lot of
But
information.
I believe Levi Strauss did invent denim jeans.
I've taken to like wearing my shirt over that label because that label also says what size it is.
You can rip off that part,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's got a little dotted line so that you can just rip it right off.
I know, but then you can see where it was, and people know that you took it off, and they know that it's easier to hide it, and then people won't guess. But if they see that you've specifically ripped it off, and they see that line, they'll go, "Oh, well, he doesn't want anyone to see his waist size."
When I was a kid growing up in Australia, all
Yes.
my Aussies will attest to this. There was an activity in school known as tagging. And it's not what you think it is.
Okay.
There was
You didn't spray paint somebody?
Nope, we didn't do that.
With a gang symbol?
But everybody
No.
wore either Levi's or Lee jeans.
Yes.
At the time. And if you still had your tag on either of those, somebody could come up and when you least expected it and rip the tag off.
Ugh.
Yeah. And then you got tagged.
That's an odd thing. Like, why was that a thing?
I don't know. Why was anything a thing?
Yeah.
It's my childhood.
Yeah, it was just like a way
weird.
to humiliate somebody. Like, oh God, you were
Yet
tagged.
another way to bully someone.
Yeah, in my school, they would just come and dump your books.
Oh.
Did that ever happen to you?
No, but I did have a boy, like one of my first days at an American school, run past me, and while he was running past me, say, "You're too ugly."
You're too ugly.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I'm too ugly.
Yeah, that's nice.
And if you think words can't hurt, it has never left me, people.
Apparently, right? All these years later.
Anyway, Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr. Not Raymond Burr, who was famously Ironside.
In a wheelchair. Okay.
And not Old Ironsides, because that was a ship, a Revolutionary War ship.
I remember that poem.
Oh, really?
There was a poem called Old Ironsides.
Well, I remember seeing it because I grew up in Boston, and you could just go out to the harbor, and there it was. It was like a little museum.
I remember having iron in my side.
What, you had that hip replaced?
Yes.
They used iron? My God, no wonder I weigh a ton.
Explains so much.
She weighs 300 pounds, but she looks like she only weighs like 150. What's that? It's all that iron in her side.
Yep, all the iron in my side. Anywho, Jean-Pierre was well known in Philadelphia at the time. His barbershop was a stop on the Underground Railroad, and both he and his wife, who was likely African-American, dedicated themselves to championing the abolitionist cause, said Stuart Johnson, president of the Aaron Burr Association.
Wow.
Yep.
I love stories of the Underground Railroad, and I'm
too.
very excited because there's a movie coming out about Harriet Tubman.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And
Who's playing Harriet Tubman?
Cynthia Erivo, who was in the color purple on Broadway. Yes.
Oh, she won the Tony.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, and
Oh,
she's
cool.
playing. And I saw a preview of it when I went to see a movie recently, and I'm like, oh, it looked so good. What a story!
That's exciting.
I know. I can't wait. But I've always been, ever since I saw Roots on television.
You have gone back to Roots so very many times.
You know what though?
It was
really,
life-changing, wasn't it?
It was. It really affected me, and I don't know whether it's because I saw it when I was 8, 9 years old on
Yeah.
television, and it stayed with me. And I is it the chicken or the egg? Was I already interested in equality at the time when I watched it, or did that start me on this lifelong interest
Yeah.
and passion for stories of slavery and stories about the Holocaust? I'm Jewish, or
Yeah.
half Jewish, so
Yeah.
I read a lot about it, and even today, when I see the horrible things that are happening in our country, I think, oh my God, have we learned nothing from history?
Apparently not.
But you have to know the history in order to be able to do that,
Yes.
to say that. So, I wonder. But Roots was actually a seminal influence
It sounds like it.
on me. And so when I saw that preview for Harriet Tubman, I was like, oh, I'll be first in line. I'll be like one of those Star Wars fans waiting in line to see
For the Harriet Tubman movie.
I'll be like the only one out there, right?
I'm here for Tubman with your tent.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to round this out, Jean-Paul Burr is the person that any founding father would have been proud to call a son, and I am humbled to be one of his descendants. That is a quote from Sherry Burr.
Even though he killed Alexander Hamilton.
Yes, but it was a duel.
Yes. So, yeah.
And actually, we're going to hear a little bit more about that later in the episode, about duels.
Well, some of us have dual personality.
Please, let's take a break so I can wash my ears out.
If you're enjoying CutOff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. So last week, I did a little update or a little clarification thing about chromosome browsers.
Yes.
And I mentioned that they are not that helpful if you are looking for your parents, basically.
If you don't know
yes, if you have unknown parentage
Right.
and know nothing about it, it's pretty useless.
Yes.
And today I'm going to talk about Thru-Lines, the feature on Ancestry, and the same goes for Thru-Lines.
Oh, okay.
And it's been there for a while. And what I've discovered for myself, since I've been looking at it recently, is that it doesn't really help any of my close matches. Mm-hmm. However, if you go down, I found lots of little connections to very distant relatives through Thru-Lines.
You'll have to explain what they are to
Okay.
me because
All right.
I don't remember if you've talked about them.
Okay. So Thru-Lines is basically what replaced what used to be DNA circles, which I never understood.
Okay.
And it's basically collecting people who you match by DNA that have the same people in their tree as you do. Mm-hmm. And also people that you don't match by DNA that have the same people in their tree
Okay.
as you do. So it differentiates for you. So, first caveat, Thru-Lines is not fact. If you have a Thru-Line, if you see something that says, hey, you have a DNA match that has the same person in your tree, and you click on it, you're like, oh, yeah, you do. If you don't further research that, you are basically doing what the vast majority of people do on Ancestry, which is cut and paste from people's trees. And just put it in their tree as fact and perpetuate that lie.
That's how rumors get started.
Exactly. Right. So you got to keep in mind that you have to do your research if it's in there.
And probably don't put it on your tree until you know for sure, right?
Until you see enough evidence
Right.
that you could, because I don't think anybody has a perfect tree. I don't think anybody's tree is 100% correct.
Right.
And a lot of the time, and because of new tags we have on Ancestry, you can, if you're not sure of something, you can still put it on the tree and just say, still researching.
Oh, I like that.
Or
Yeah.
possible, or,
Don't take this as fact. I haven't figured it out
Exactly.
yet. Yeah.
Precisely. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of what I discovered recently with my more distant matches.
Please do.
Okay. My fourth great-grandmother, Susanna Gill, was married to John Fisher. We all know I'm a Fisher. In 1780 at All Saints in Wakefield, Yorkshire. Now, this is stuff that I've researched and I have in my tree. I have all of the church records and, basically stuff that
It
as
corroborates.
much evidence as you can
Right.
without having DNA evidence.
Right.
Basically, because it's from 1740.
They didn't have DNA tests back
They
then?
did not.
Oh,
No. So I found I got to her in my Thru-Lines, which is a series of pictures of your relatives, and it just goes by generation to whoever it is, and then you can click on one, and it'll say, "Hey, we think this is a match for you," and this person matches, in this case, 8 centimorgans with me. Which is not high, and a lot of the time, anything less than 10 centimorgans we're told to ignore because it can be noise, it can be various different things. But I will say that I think it's a good way to semi-confirm our more distant matches and that our trees are on the right track,
All right.
if that makes sense. So Thru-Lines says that this person and I are 6th cousins. Sixth
Okay.
cousins. She has Susanna Gill in her tree as well, who is my, did I say third great grandmother? Fourth
no,
great grandmother.
okay.
I said fourth great grandmother.
But you lose me when you get into
I
fourth
know,
great grandmother.
I know.
I can't. My mind can't
It's a lot.
process that far back.
And it's a number.
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
It's like my C in trigonometry.
Yes, exactly. And we're back. So her Susanna
Just can't get over it.
is the same. Anywho, so her Susanna had the same parents that my Susanna did. So we're on the right track there. However, her Susanna marries somebody by the name of Heaton as opposed to Fisher. I'm a Fisher, so obviously my Susanna married a Fisher, and goes on to have a completely different tree than mine. So one or both of us is wrong. But the fact that we share even a minuscule amount of DNA suggests that one of us is right. And at least about her parents. So because my tree is built out quite well, if I do say so myself.
Well, you're a professional.
Yes, and I have lots of documentation, and I actually look at all the siblings. Most people, like this person, don't put their siblings in their trees, the siblings of their ancestors, even though they're ancestors as well. But in my tree, one of the Susanna's sisters did marry somebody named Heaton.
Okay.
It was a different Heaton. One was John Heaton, one was Richard Heaton. But the sister of my Susanna married a Heaton, definitely. And so there is a connection there.
Right.
They're in the general area. Okay? So I believe I am most likely correct. Am I going to reach out to her and say, I think you made a mistake? Probably not.
Yeah, it's
it goes pretty far back, even though, I mean, I'm tempted to because I hate perpetuating incorrect information. But again, I can't be 100% sure I'm correct too.
No, but you at some point you might have some other match or something that tells you, right? It gives you more information so you can be more certain or less certain depending on what that match is, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Right. I have a lot of corroborating evidence on my Fisher line. So I feel pretty confident, but basically, I'm telling you this because it's an example of how we can't look at Thru-Lines and say, oh, Thru-Lines tells me this, it must be true.
Right.
Because all it's doing is using an algorithm. Another one is my third great-grandfather, Alexander Anderson, who's from Dysart, Scotland. I didn't have a mother listed for him, and there's a suggestion in Thru-Lines that his mother was a Euphemia Burt. So I looked at it, and I have 2 DNA matches that have her in my tree.
Euphemia.
That
is a
good name,
It's
huh?
a great name.
I know. I like it.
You're like, when did that name die out? Euphemia.
I think we should bring it back.
It sounds a little bit like a disease.
I have euphemia.
Yeah, I know.
I have acute euphemia.
I know. I would love to go with you, but I've got euphemia. And I need to be home. No, she's visiting from Scotland.
I have something that'll fix euphemia.
Look at us making fun. Like it's like we're children in a schoolyard making fun of.
She's my fourth great grandmother.
Yes, and she's looking at you from beyond the grave, going, "Stop making fun of my name.
Stop making fun of my name." She's Scottish, you know.
Oh my God!
I'm so sorry. I just did that.
I love that you can do Scottish and Australian and I guess American.
Newsflash: that was not really good Scottish.
Well, it's good enough for me.
I should have rolled my R's more.
It's good enough for like Finian's Rainbow. Oh, wait a minute, that's Irish.
Yes, Finian. Yeah. What's Scottish? Brigadoon. Isn't it?
And Macbeth. The Scottish play.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say you can't say that, but we're not on stage.
That's
or
right.
in a theater.
Yeah, folks, it's lore that if you're doing the show Macbeth, you cannot, in the theater, say the name of the play. You have to say the Scottish
and
play.
if you do, you have to go outside, turn around 3 times, and spit.
Really?
I think that's what it is.
Oh.
I've spent much of my children's childhood backstage at musicals where I was doing hair and what have you. And
They do hair in children's musicals?
doing their hair on their head.
Oh, good. I was going to say, this sounds pornographic. They can't do nude scenes with children. That's terrible.
I would love to see that. Just with toddlers who like to take their clothes off anyway.
Right? My God. Back to Euphemia.
Back to Euphemia. So yeah, there are 2 DNA matches. One is already an identified Anderson match of mine from Sydney, so I'm pretty sure it's correct because my Andersons went to Sydney. There are 8 non-DNA trees that also link Euphemia to Alex. So, and they all show documentary of a marriage between Euphemia and a Henry Anderson. And I know for a fact that Alex's father's name was Henry. So I can be reasonably sure this is correct. And the caveat there is Henry Anderson in Scotland is kind of like John Smith in the U.S.
Yeah. I wonder, like, was Euphemia a common name at one time?
Relatively, yeah,
Really?
I would say.
Wow.
Yeah, there were lots of names that you were like, whoa, that's crazy. And then everybody has that name in that general area.
Right.
Yeah.
Because my niece is pregnant, and she and her husband are trying to come up with names, and she's researching names, and I'm going to throw Euphemia into that bunch.
Oh, do throw.
Oh, wait, you know what? No, she's having a boy, so never mind.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe just Eustace. Isn't that a boy's name?
Yes, I have Eustace in my family.
Yeah.
My eustachian tubes get clogged a lot
Is that
because
why
of
you
the
have
Euphemia.
And the tinnitus, or what?
Tinnitus, yes. Probably. They're all connected.
You're going to name your child Tinnitus. Eustace Tinnitus Dixon Jackson.
Dixon Jackson Suarez, my friend Nicholas would say. All right, so that's it. My point being that Thru-Lines is a fun little thing. It's nothing that should be relied upon if you're a serious genealogist.
Don't take it as gospel, and don't take
anything as gospel except for
the gospel.
DNA with. Oh, interesting, isn't it?
That's where it comes from.
It is. Oh, never mind. Okay.
Don't take it as the Godspell.
Don't take it as Godspell. The book of Matthew, everybody. Okay. That is all I have to say about Thru-Lines. It's a fun little activity, but that's all it is.
And all I got out of this was that you had pizza, and it's making me hungry, and I think we should take a break and have some pizza. We'll be back, folks. Thank you for listening to CutOff Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. That's me.
All right, story time.
Oh, yay. This is, part 2 from Donya
Papoose Williams, author of Comes to the Light.
Yes.
So where we left off, Donya had just been telling us about slave schedules.
That's amazing.
And I know.
Again, going back to my whole obsession with roots.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated.
I know. I told you this episode was going to get into that. So where we left off, she was talking about that, and she started talking about Edgefield, South Carolina, which is a central focal point in a lot of African-American genealogical research.
Mm-hmm.
So she's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
All right.
The name of my book is Comes to the Light, Learning About the Entangled Families of Edgefield, South Carolina.
Right. And now we shall launch into Edgefield, South Carolina, and the significance basically it has for really the African-American community, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an awesome spot. And the thing about it is that because they kept such great records, these slave owners were, and on their inventory list, they were naming the people that they owned because they were inventory. They were a part of the cattle and the sheep and all that other good stuff.
That's weird. Okay.
Right. But they were naming them. Yes. They were telling you who they were.
Yeah.
Well, another person by the name of Gloria Lucas, she's passed on, the late Gloria Lucas, took her time. And maybe I think it was from 6 to 8 years. And she wrote a book called The Slave Records of Edgefield, South Carolina. And she went through every last one of these slave records, these inventory lists, these wills, these deeds, anywhere that was naming enslaved people, and she put it in a book. And every person was named. So this book is like 400 pages long. It's 8.5 by 11 sheets. It has over 15,000 enslaved names, their owners. The way it's listed is the name of the enslaved person, a description, if a description was given about them, the owner at the time and the new owner that had them, the date they were purchased and how much they were purchased for.
Oh, wow.
It's extremely awesome.
Yeah.
Well, in there is where my great-grandmother, my two-time great-grandmother is listed, both with Whitfield and with Preston.
Okay.
And between that book, his will, and the 1850 slave schedule, I was able to point out my great-great-grandmother and her siblings and possibly her mother.
Explain to me how the name changed.
So that's something that I'm still trying to understand.
Okay.
She kept the name Martha Brooks. In 1870, you found her in the 1870 census as Martha Brooks, and she had a daughter named Rebecca, a set of twin boys named Robert and David, then my great-grandfather, Peter, and then a second set of twin boys by the name of Thomas and George. They were all listed as Brookses. But when I found them again in 1880, Rebecca had been married and a widow already.
Okay.
Martha was now listed as a widow, but she still carried the name Brooks. Rebecca now carried her husband's name, Rainey or Ramey.
Okay.
The rest of the children that were still there carried the last name Yeldale.
And Brooks was there.
Was the slave owner.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So I'm looking at it like she kept that name Brooks regardless.
Yeah.
1870 never stated whether she had ever been married, widowed, divorced, none of that. 1880 did. It said that she was a widow, but she was never with a man. But she kept that name Brooks. So then I went a little bit further with my research. I started to look at who was owning the land. I looked at first and foremost, I looked at the slave record book, and it showed that from Preston, once Preston died and his enslaved people were being sold, she had actually gone to a man named Lemuel Brooks. It is said, I haven't proven it yet, but it is said that Lemuel is a cousin of that Brooks line. I'm about 75% sure that that's who that is, that he's a cousin. When Martha was sold on her own at a price of $1,250. She was very valuable in that she was a breeder.
Yes.
So she had other children that I don't know about yet. But the thing about it is, I looked to see who the person was. It was Lemuel Brooks. Then I looked to see on the 1870 census whose land she was living on. And it was Lemuel Brooks.
Oh,
FamilySearch.org has the freedmen labor contracts, the deeds, all of those different things. I ended up finding a labor contract for Martha and Lemuel. And it was at that point that makes me feel like that Lemuel was a cousin, because Martha was well taken care of. I'm trying to pull it up for
she
you.
had a labor contract.
Yep.
As a slave.
This was after I'm sorry, I didn't say
That's
that.
okay.
This was after the Civil War ended. So after the Civil War ended, labor contracts were created.
Gotcha.
In order to best serve African Americans and trying to get them out of the quote unquote slump that they were now in, because they were no longer owned. So now they were either pushed off of the land that they were living on, which was the old slave owners, because they were hating the fact that they had lost the war.
Yeah.
So, or but yet they still needed their land worked. So contracts were created, labor contracts were created in order for these people to still have places to live, have money in their pocket, be able to take care of their children. And the old enslavers would be able to do whatever it was that they needed to do as far as keeping their land and getting what they wanted. That's why the labor contracts came to pass.
I see.
Now, the thing is, this is also how sharecropping came to pass. That's what the sharecroppers were. And they were a poor group of people, extremely poor group of people. She was now living on the land of Lemuel Brooks, which was the last person who owned her. And on that land, in that labor contract, you can see where it starts to sound like he was probably related, because the care that he took for her, as opposed to the care that he took for the others that was living on his land, was totally different.
Okay.
And plus, she carried that Brooks name. She never let it go. There were others on the land, names like Ben and Phyllis and Adam, Willis, Nancy, Ned, and Harriet. He was saying things in the contract like, if your children get out of line, I have the right to beat them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was still
Yeah,
slavery.
sure.
It was still slavery. So just saying it like that, it was still slavery.
Right.
But for Martha, she was given a stipend of $600 a month.
Okay.
She had a house.
Yeah.
This was to take care of her children and herself. It was totally different. He made no statement of, if your children get out of line, I'm gonna whoop you type
Right,
things.
right.
You don't have to worry about these things. Her end of the contract was literally written after everybody else's. This is what leads me to think he was taking care of family.
Yeah,
and
it
if he's
sounds like
taking care of family, then you also are related to the Brooks line.
Right.
But these were the kind of things that were going on with her. She never let go of that Brooks name. Her children, she changed it to Yeldale. One of my biggest things that I have been trying to do for the past, I'm going to say 15 years, is find out why she switched to Yeldale. If we are actually blood Yeldales, and if we are, who is the person?
So you don't know the origin of the Yeldale name?
I don't know it for me.
I see.
I don't know it for me.
Yeah.
Because she was a breeder, anybody could have had my great-grandfather.
Okay. Oh, wow.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I do connect. I know one of the things that I do know is that I am at least a distant cousin of the white Yeldales that were from the Edgefield, South Carolina area. And it wasn't until about a couple of years ago that I actually found out who was probably the first black Yeldale, and he was enslaved by the white Yeldales.
Oh,
so my connection is through them.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't know who it is.
Right, specifically. What's it like to do genetic genealogy of people from Edgefield?
It's hell. It really is. It's hell. And the reason why I say that, and I can give you an example, on my grandmother's side, my grandmother, her last name was Senior, but her family's last name is Peterson. Mm-hmm. Her grandmother, her mother's last name was Peterson. The Peterson family was a very large family in Edgefield, South Carolina, and they pretty much married everybody in that area,
right,
including their cousins.
Right.
They married their family. And I've learned in my research that I actually come from the founding families of the Edgefield area. So Edgefield originally was a part of this one big large landmass called the 96th District when South Carolina was first being formed and all that other good stuff. Mm-hmm. And the 96th District was broken up in 1785 into 6 different areas, and Edgefield was one of them. But before it was broken up, our families was just living all on the 96.
Right.
So this has everything to do with the DNA, the genetics, because now we're learning, even though these people were broken up, even though these counties were broken up, the people were still living in the same spots.
Right.
And they were family. So my Peterson line married into a family called the Settles. My great-grandmother had a sister named Fanny, and Fanny ended up marrying her first cousin. And I mean her very first cousin. Yeah. It blew my mind. But when I was going backwards, I started to find this man by the name of Moses Williams. And Moses Williams, I ended up learning that he had 45 kids.
Okay. All right.
So now
Go
you see
Moses.
where the endogamy is going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
It was because he ended up, and 40 of those children were girls. He had 40 girls, 5 boys. I end up being his 4th, 5th, and 6th great-grandchild because of endogamy.
Oh, my gosh. Do you have just a crazy amount of high matches in your DNA matches, or just a crazy amount of matches, period?
It's just a crazy amount of matches.
Right. So when I reached out to you the first time, it was for a client, and she was, I don't know, maybe a 3rd cousin to your mom, I think. Mm-hmm. And I was all hopeful until you told me all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Donya, maybe next time.
Yeah. More than likely, it's going to go back to Moses.
Oh, probably.
And I think I told you this when we were talking. It's going to be one of Moses's children.
Yeah.
Because each one of his kids so far, my cousin Brian and I, we are doing research along with 3 other cousins who are very much involved in this whole Moses Williams thing. We have several different projects.
Okay.
And so far we've found 17 out of the 45 children, all 5 boys and 12 of the girls.
Okay.
And every last one of them have 10 or more kids.
Oh, man. I remember you mentioning something about a mass migration.
There were 2.
Okay.
The first one, and this was just in general in U.S. history, the first migration that happened right after the Civil War. And these people were going and trying to find their families, moving south and just really, or west, the areas that they knew that their families were being taken.
Right.
So that was the first one. And that one, actually, there were like 5,000 people who left in 1880 from Edgefield alone. Then around the 1900, which was the second migration, you had these African Americans moving north because they were trying to get away from no jobs, Jim Crow era. It was really still reverting back. Even though slavery was supposedly ended in 1865, it really wasn't. There were still people being enslaved. There were still people who were thought of as slaves. You know, there was people who were born in 1906 and said that they were slaves.
Oh, wow.
Technically, slavery wasn't supposed to have been happening.
Right.
So that second migration is when they started going north. Okay. So then they started dropping in out of Edgefield. Our Edgefield families moved up through to Virginia, dropped off there. A lot dropped off here in D.C., which was where my family dropped at. Then you had people going into Maryland, rolling into New York, just going straight up. Okay. Straight north.
Wow.
And yeah, so we had a lot of people, a lot of families that did that. And we didn't learn that until DNA. DNA is such an eye-opening, oh my God, it's such an eye-opening thing especially for African Americans. I know it's eye-opening for everyone.
Yeah.
But for African Americans, because of that 1870 brick wall that all African Americans hit, DNA busts it open.
Even with the endogamy, it can't, obviously it muddies it up because of the endogamy, but still there's obviously, we're finding out stuff that we never would have without it.
Exactly. It's awesome for African Americans, but then there are some white Americans that just don't want to do it. They're like, no. So we have several families that will close their tree on us because they're like, no, thank you.
Really?
Yeah, we have families that will shut you down. I had one person who told me, oh, no, we don't have Black people in our family, and hung up the phone on me.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And this is in Edgefield. So in order to fight that, I came up with, I had a cousin. Her name was Sheila Hightower. God, I can't believe it's almost 2 years now. But Sheila died. But before Sheila died, she was deep into genetic genealogy, so deep that she would go and just purchase kits and get people tested because we kept running into white family members who was just dodging us left and right.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So she just started getting people tested. This woman probably easily bought 40 to 50 kits out of her own pocket. And so then she died on me. And it broke my heart, but I had to figure out a way to help to continue her spirit. So that's where we came up with the Sheila Hightower Allen. Originally, it was called the Sheila Hightower Allen DNA Fund.
Okay.
And we had created a GoFundMe account for it and raised about $500. But something within, and I know you get it when your ancestors talk to you. This was an ancestor speaking to me type thing, said, turn it into a project, include a school. So that's what I did. I included Howard University. I ended up getting in touch with Howard University, and Howard University is known for their bone collection. So they actually do a lot of genetic and DNA work. So as of right now, if you go to AfricanBloodlines.com, you will see information about the Sheila Hightower Allen Project. And now we are in the process of collecting DNA from different family members, dropping them to Howard so that Howard can create a DNA tree for us while we're creating the paper trail tree.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's our new step.
I love
It's
that.
like you want to ignore us, fine. Go ahead and ignore us. Yeah.
Oh,
because I
man.
mean, you gotta separate yourself. You gotta separate yourself from all of this. It's painful. It's hard to hear. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
It's hard to read.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do this.
You have to acknowledge the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I talked to you when you started talking about breeders, and that is very difficult to hear for the first time. Just how frank you are about it. I think you're giving such a humanity to the whole thing. Tell me about your podcast real quickly and how people can find it.
Okay. Our podcast is with me and my cousin, Brian, and it's called Genealogy Adventures Live. Right now, you can find it on Facebook, then it's the Genealogy Adventures page, Facebook page, and we stream on there every first and third Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, I love genealogy. I love what I'm finding, and the fact that I'm able to separate, especially with Preston. Preston is a big issue.
Yeah.
This man he was the enslaver, and he believed completely, totally, and wholly in slavery. He had, at one point, there was a speech that he had written where he said that they should take the Constitution and just put it under their foot. He told them, I've been a disunionist since I was born. I will be a disunionist until the day I die.
Wow.
Yeah, he was something else, and I respect it because I understand where my mouth comes from. I understand why I'm so forward. So I get it. I can't be mad at who I am. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, Donya, thank you.
I did want to say this. If you find that your family is from South Carolina, Edgefield, whether it's like 12 counties. If you find that your family is from any of those 12 counties, and you can find a listing of them on Facebook, it's called the Sheila Hightower Island DNA page.
Great. Thank you so much. The Sheila Hightower DNA page. Donya, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much.
And there we have
Donya
Williams.
Thank you so much, Donya, for doing that. I was the one who said to Julie, "You've got to get her on the podcast," and I'm so glad this came to fruition. And you did not disappoint.
No,
so thank
she did
you.
Not. Yeah, thanks, Donya. I will put a link to her podcast and also her book in the Facebook.
Oh,
group.
good. Yeah, I'm going to use that link.
Yeah.
I want to listen to her some more and read her book.
I know. She made me laugh so much, even more than you hear me laughing. I had to cut out some of my laughing because she's hilarious.
I cut out a lot of your laughter, too. I just feel like after I've said something funny, I don't want it to sound too much. Like, when you go on laughing for 10 minutes, I'm like, I better just cut it. And
you don't want to get a big head or anything.
Otherwise, we'd never get through the podcast.
Speaking of getting through the podcast, tell people about yourself, please.
I am Richard Castle. I am a songwriter and pianist, musician. You can follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs, or you can go to my website, richardcastle.com.
Follow me on the Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast on the Twitter at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook page, the CutOff Jeans Podcast. Send me an email, julesjackson at cutoffjeans.com.
And when Mr. Levi Strauss began creating his signature line back in, we guess, 1850,
1850s?
if he wasn't tagged... What did he find? What did he put? What was the secret ingredient that he put in that?
Well, Richard, the truth was in his jeans.